In 1947, Admiral Richard Byrd flew his plane over the North Pole and claimed he entered another world, a world inside our own planet. He described lush green valleys where there should have been ice. He spoke of mountains that disappeared into mist and forests that stretched beyond the horizon. The United States government allegedly classified his diary immediately upon his return. What did Admiral Byrd really see beyond the ice that day? The snow stretches endlessly across the frozen Antarctic landscape. Wind howls across sheets of white that seem to extend forever in every direction. This is one of the most isolated places on Earth. Or is it? For centuries, explorers have returned from the polar regions with stories that defy explanation. Strange compass readings that spin wildly without reason. Animals appearing in places where nothing should survive. Warm air currents rising from the ice itself. And legends far older than modern exploration suggest that what we call Earth is not solid at all. The ancient Greeks wrote about vast caverns beneath the surface where entire civilizations thrived. The Buddhists speak of Agartha, an underground kingdom inhabited by beings far more advanced than those on the surface. Native American tribes across the continent share stories of their ancestors emerging from tunnels deep within the earth. Are these just myths passed down through generations? Or do they point to something our modern science has overlooked? The compass needle spins erratically in the explorer's hand. He stands at the edge of what should be solid ice, but the instruments refuse to settle on magnetic north. This is the moment where everything changes, where the familiar world ends and something else begins. Admiral Richard Byrd was not a man prone to fantasy. He was a decorated naval officer and a pioneering aviator. His expeditions to Antarctica were backed by the United States government and meticulously documented. In February of 1947, Byrd led Operation Highjump, the largest Antarctic expedition in history. 13 ships, 4,000 men, and months of carefully planned exploration. The official mission was to establish research bases and test equipment in extreme cold. But something happened during that expedition that was never fully explained. According to his allegedly classified diary, Byrd flew his plane across the pole on February 19th. The ice below him began to change. Mountains rose where his maps showed flat terrain. He reported seeing areas of green vegetation and what appeared to be lakes of liquid water. This was impossible. The temperature at that altitude and latitude should have frozen anything instantly. The plane descended toward a valley that glowed with an unusual light. Byrd described the light as neither sunlight nor artificial, but something in between. His instruments failed completely. The radio went silent. The engines continued running, but his controls felt loose, as if something else was guiding the aircraft. Then he saw them, disc-shaped craft moving at impossible speeds. They flanked his plane on both sides, close enough that he could see through their transparent sections. Inside, he claimed to see beings observing him. One of the craft projected some kind of beam that brought his plane safely to the ground. Byrd wrote that he was greeted by tall, fair-haired beings who spoke perfect English. They led him through tunnels, carved from crystal, into a massive underground city. The architecture was unlike anything he had seen on Earth. Buildings seemed to generate their own light from within. Transportation moved silently through the air without visible propulsion. The beings told him they were concerned about humanity's use of atomic weapons. They warned that the surface world was on a path toward destruction. Then they released him with a message to deliver to his superiors. The plane lifted off without him touching the controls. When Byrd returned to base, he immediately reported what had happened. He was allegedly ordered to remain silent about the encounter. His diary was confiscated. The official records of Operation Highjump mention nothing about this flight. But here's what we know for certain. Operation Highjump was supposed to last 6 months. It was abruptly terminated after only 8 weeks. The expedition returned home far ahead of schedule, with no public explanation given. Admiral Byrd did give a press conference in Chile on his way back to the United States. In that interview, he made a cryptic statement that shocked the journalists present. He said that America needed to prepare for the possibility of hostile aircraft that could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds. Why would an Antarctic research expedition leader make such a statement? What did he see that prompted such a warning? The military classified large portions of the expedition's findings. Some of those documents remain classified to this day. The frozen wasteland stretches beneath gray skies. Somewhere in this endless white, there are answers buried deeper than the ice itself. But to understand what Byrd might have found, we need to go back much further. The idea of a hollow Earth is not new. In 1692, astronomer Edmund Halley proposed that Earth consisted of nested spheres. He suggested this could explain anomalies in a planet's magnetic field. Halley believed there might be atmospheres between these shells, and possibly even life. This wasn't considered fringe science at the time. Halley was the Astronomer Royal of England and one of the most respected scientists of his era. In 1818, a man named John Cleves Symmes took the idea further. Symmes was a former army captain and a decorated veteran. He proposed that Earth was hollow with openings at both poles. He called these openings Symmes holes and spent years trying to organize an expedition to prove their existence. Symmes sent his theory to universities, scientific societies, and government officials around the world. Most dismissed him, but some didn't. He gained supporters including newspaper editors, businessmen, and even some members of Congress. In 1823, Symmes nearly secured funding for a polar expedition. The proposal made it all the way to President John Quincy Adams, who showed interest. But Adams left office before approving the mission, and his successor killed the project. Symmes died in 1829, still believing he was right. His gravestone features an engraving of his hollow Earth model. To this day, you can visit his memorial in Hamilton, Ohio, and see the spheres carved into stone. The theory should have died with him, but it didn't. Throughout the 1800s, variations of hollow Earth theory persisted. Some claimed the interior was illuminated by a small sun at the planet's core. Others suggested advanced civilizations lived in the underground realm. These ideas were dismissed by mainstream science as understanding of geology advanced. By the early 1900s, seismic studies proved Earth had a dense core of molten metal. But proving Earth has a solid core doesn't actually disprove all hollow Earth theories. Some believers simply adapted their models. What if there were massive caverns we haven't discovered? What if there were openings near the poles that led to underground spaces? What if these spaces were so large they had their own ecosystems? The frozen pole stretches to the horizon in every direction. Somewhere in that whiteness, compasses lose their way. Somewhere in that emptiness, warm winds rise from cracks in the ice. Let's talk about what polar explorers have actually reported over the years. In 1838, an expedition led by Charles Wilkes explored the Antarctic coast. His crew reported seeing strange lights in the southern sky that resembled the aurora, but moved differently. They also noted unusual animal sightings, including seals far inland where there should have been no food source. In 1912, Marshall Gardner published a book called A Journey to the Earth's Interior. Gardner had gathered reports from Arctic explorers spanning decades. One pattern emerged consistently. Explorers reported the temperature increasing as they traveled north beyond a certain latitude. They found open water where ice should have been. They saw birds flying north toward the pole, as if traveling to warmer climates. They encountered butterflies and other insects in regions too cold for them to survive. The most puzzling reports involved finding seeds, pollen, and even colored snow containing what appeared to be flower petals. Where were these organic materials coming from? In 1913, Arctic explorer Fridtjof Nansen described discovering a massive depression in the ice near the pole. He estimated it was several miles wide. The walls of this depression were smooth as if carved by flowing water. At the bottom, he could see what looked like dark soil or rock. But when he attempted to reach it, his crew reported feeling disoriented and their compass readings became completely unreliable. Nansen was forced to turn back. He never explained in his official reports what he thought caused the depression. But in private letters, he mentioned his crew members having vivid dreams that night. Dreams of being underground in vast spaces lit by strange glowing stones. The diary sits on a desk under dim light. Its pages, yellowed with age, hold secrets that were never meant to be shared. Each word, written in careful script, describes the impossible. Admiral Byrd's alleged secret diary surfaced decades after his death. The diary's authenticity has been debated extensively. Some claim it matches Byrd's handwriting and writing style. Others point out inconsistencies and anachronisms that suggest it might be a fabrication. But whether the diary is real or not, the questions it raises are worth examining. If Byrd did encounter something unusual, would the government really have classified it? The answer is almost certainly yes. During the 1940s, the United States was entering the Cold War. Any discovery that could provide military advantage would have been classified immediately. If Byrd found entrance to underground spaces near the poles, that would be of enormous strategic interest. If he encountered unknown craft with advanced propulsion, that would be classified at the highest levels. And if there were beings living beneath the ice with technology beyond our own, revealing that to the public would have been unthinkable. The government's handling of Operation Highjump itself raises questions. Why send 4,000 men and 13 ships to Antarctica in 1947? The official explanation was to test equipment and establish research bases. But the United States had just finished fighting World War II. Resources were scarce. The military was being rapidly downsized. Yet they committed massive resources to an Antarctic expedition that would be abruptly canceled after only 8 weeks. What changed? What did they find or not find that justified pulling out early? The official reports say bad weather forced the early return. But Operation Highjump was planned for Antarctic summer, the only time such expeditions are possible. Weather conditions were expected and prepared for. One member of the expedition, a man named William Mills, gave an interview decades later when he was in his 80s. Mills claimed they were searching for something specific near the pole. He wouldn't say what, but he mentioned that several aircraft disappeared during the expedition. The official record confirms that at least one plane crashed, killing 3 crew members. Mills suggested there were other incidents that never made it into official reports. He described strange electronic interference that grounded flights for days. He talked about witnessing lights beneath the ice that seemed to move with purpose. When pressed for details, Mills would only say that some things were better left buried. The ice cracks and shifts under immense pressure. Beneath its surface, ancient secrets remain frozen in time. Or perhaps they're not frozen at all. Let's examine the scientific arguments, both for and against hollow Earth theory. Modern seismology tells us Earth has distinct layers. We have the crust, the mantle, the outer core, and the inner core. Seismic waves from earthquakes travel through the planet and are detected by instruments worldwide. The speed and behavior of these waves reveal density and composition of what they pass through. This data clearly shows Earth has a dense iron core at its center. There's no room in these measurements for hollow spaces of the scale hollow Earth theorists propose. But here's what the seismic data doesn't rule out. Large cavern systems in the crust could exist without being detected by earthquake waves. We've discovered enormous cave systems that were completely unknown until modern times. The Sun Dune Cave in Vietnam, the world's largest known cave passage, was only discovered in 1991. It's so massive it has its own weather system, including clouds and rain. If such enormous spaces can exist undiscovered in the Earth's crust, what else might be down there? The Earth's magnetic field also raises interesting questions. The field is generated by motion of molten metal in the outer core. But the magnetic poles don't align perfectly with the geographic poles, and they move over time. The North Magnetic Pole has been drifting rapidly in recent decades, moving from Canada toward Siberia. Some hollow Earth proponents argue this movement could be explained by openings at the poles affecting the magnetic field. Mainstream science has other explanations, but the rapid movement of the poles is still not fully understood. Then there's the question of gravity. If Earth were hollow, the mass distribution would be different. Gravity at the surface would be weaker than it actually is. We've measured Earth's gravity extensively, and the measurements match what we'd expect from a solid planet. But again, this doesn't rule out large cavities within the crust. It only rules out a completely hollow planet with thin shells. The compass spins wildly, refusing to point in any single direction. Something beneath the ice is interfering with the magnetic field in ways that shouldn't be possible. Now let's talk about the strangest evidence that keeps this theory alive: the reports of unusual animal sightings near the poles. In 1851, explorer Elisha Kent Kane reported seeing foxes far north of where they should be able to survive. The animals appeared well-fed and healthy despite the complete lack of visible food sources. Kane tracked them northward, but lost their trail in heavy snow. In the 1930s, Soviet expeditions in the Arctic reported similar anomalies. They found fresh water that wasn't frozen in areas where everything should be solid ice. They photographed birds they couldn't identify, species that didn't match any in their reference materials. Some of these photographs still exist in Russian archives. Researchers have attempted to identify the birds, but without success. They appear similar to temperate climate species, but with subtle differences, as if they evolved in isolation from known populations. In 1946, just before Operation Highjump, an Antarctic expedition spotted what they described as a mammoth-sized creature moving across the ice in the distance. The sighting was brief and occurred during poor visibility. It was dismissed as probably being a seal, or possibly a misidentified whale seen through blowing snow. But the crew members who saw it insisted it was something else, something that moved with a gait unlike any known animal. The photograph is grainy and unclear. Dark shapes against white ice could be almost anything. But those who were there insist they saw something unexplainable. In the 1970s, satellite imagery of the poles became available to researchers. Some analysts claimed to see unusual formations near the North Pole, shadows and colorations that suggested openings or depressions in the ice. When these were investigated, most turned out to be artifacts of the imaging process or simply unusual ice formations. But not all of them were explained. NASA imagery from 1968 shows what appears to be a massive circular depression near the North Pole. The depression is approximately 90 miles in diameter. It's visible in multiple satellite passes and doesn't appear to be an imaging artifact. When this image was brought to NASA's attention, they released a statement saying it was a hole in the data, not a hole in the ice. They explained that polar satellites don't pass directly over the poles, creating gaps in coverage. This makes sense technically, but some researchers have pointed out that the shape is too perfect and too consistent across multiple images to be just missing data. The debate continues. Meanwhile, the area in question is one of the most inaccessible on Earth, making direct investigation nearly impossible. The satellite image appears on a screen casting blue light across a darkened room. There in the pixelated landscape, something circular and dark stares back like an eye. Let's consider what would be required for a hollow Earth or large underground cavities to exist. You would need a heat source to prevent everything from freezing. Hollow Earth theorists often propose a central sun or some kind of luminous core. Modern science tells us this isn't possible with what we know about planetary formation. But there are heat sources we know exist underground. Geothermal energy heats groundwater and creates hot springs worldwide. In some caves, the temperature remains constant year-round, regardless of surface conditions. If there were large enough spaces with geothermal heating, they could theoretically maintain habitable temperatures. You would need air circulation. Large cave systems on Earth do have their own air circulation patterns. The Sun Dune Cave I mentioned earlier has rivers and waterfalls that create humidity and air movement. Some caves have entrances that aren't obvious from the surface, with air flowing in and out through cracks and fissures. If underground spaces near the poles existed, air circulation through ice could explain the warm air currents some explorers reported. You would need an ecosystem. This is harder to explain, but not impossible. We've discovered entire ecosystems in deep caves that are completely cut off from sunlight. These ecosystems are based on chemosynthesis rather than photosynthesis. Bacteria and other organisms derive energy from chemicals in rocks and water rather than from the sun. Complex food chains exist in these dark environments. If similar conditions existed on a larger scale deeper in the Earth, an underground ecosystem isn't scientifically impossible. It would be extraordinary, but not impossible. The cavern stretches into darkness, beyond where any light can reach. Somewhere in that void, something might be living in conditions we've never imagined. Here's where the theory takes a turn from geology into legend. Many Hollow Earth believers don't just think there are caves underground. They believe there's an entire civilization. The legend of Agartha appears in Buddhist and Hindu texts going back centuries. Agartha is described as an underground kingdom ruled by enlightened beings. It's said to be accessed through caves in the Himalayas and other remote mountain ranges. The beings of Agartha supposedly possess technology and knowledge far beyond surface civilizations. They've allegedly chosen to remain hidden, waiting for humanity to evolve spiritually before making contact. Similar legends exist in cultures around the world. The ancient Greeks spoke of Hades, not just as an afterlife, but as a physical place beneath the earth. Native American tribes from the Hopi to the Lakota have traditions of ancestors emerging from underground. Some of these legends specifically mention the people coming from the north, traveling through ice and cold to reach the surface. Norse mythology describes multiple worlds, some existing beneath Midgard, the realm of humans. These weren't considered metaphorical, but actual places that could theoretically be reached through the right paths. When European explorers first encountered these similar stories from cultures that had no contact with each other, some took it as evidence of a common source. Perhaps all these legends referred to the same underground realm. The carved stone depicts figures emerging from darkness into light. Ancient hands shaped this story into rock thousands of years ago. What did they know that we've forgotten? In 1943, during World War II, rumors emerged that Nazi Germany had sent expeditions to Antarctica. These weren't just rumors. Germany did send an Antarctic expedition in 1938. The expedition claimed a massive territory for the Third Reich and named it New Swabia. They took thousands of photographs and conducted extensive surveys of the area. What was the real purpose of this expedition? Germany was preparing for war. Resources were desperately needed for military buildup. Why spend those resources on Antarctic exploration? Some historians suggest they were searching for natural resources, possibly oil deposits or minerals. Others point to the Nazi leadership's obsession with occult theories and ancient civilizations. Hitler and several high-ranking Nazis believed in theories about Aryan races originating from advanced ancient cultures. They funded expeditions to Tibet, South America, and Antarctica, searching for evidence of these civilizations. Did they find something in Antarctica? Toward the end of World War II, as Germany was collapsing, U-boats were reported leaving German ports and disappearing. After the war ended, some German submarines surrendered in Argentina months after Germany's surrender. Where had they been? Rumors persisted that some Nazi leadership had escaped to secret bases in South America, or even Antarctica. The rumors were dismissed as conspiracy theories. But documents declassified decades later confirmed that the United States took the possibility seriously enough to investigate. Operation Highjump in 1947 was officially about research and training, but some historians now believe part of its mission was to search for potential Nazi holdouts in Antarctica. If the expedition found evidence of German bases or activities, that would explain the sudden termination of the mission. It would also explain the continued classification of some documents. But there's no concrete evidence this is what happened. It remains speculation based on timing and circumstantial details. The submarine surfaces through ice in utter silence. Its hull is marked with symbols that should have been abandoned when the war ended. But here in the frozen wasteland far from civilization, other rules apply. Let's bring this into more recent times. In 1996, researchers analyzing seismic data discovered something unexpected beneath Antarctica. They found what appeared to be a massive lake beneath the ice. This seemed impossible. The ice in some areas is over 2 miles thick. The weight and cold should prevent liquid water from existing. But further studies confirmed it. Lake Vostok, as it came to be known, is one of the largest lakes on Earth. It's been sealed beneath the ice for potentially millions of years. Whatever life might exist in that lake would have evolved in complete isolation from the surface world. In 2012, Russian scientists drilled through the ice and reached Lake Vostok. They extracted water samples and discovered microbial life. Life had found a way to exist in one of the most extreme environments on Earth. If life can exist in Lake Vostok, what else might exist in places we haven't looked? There are over 400 known subglacial lakes beneath Antarctica. Most have never been sampled. Some are larger than Lake Vostok. What's in those waters? The drill penetrates deeper into ice that hasn't seen light in millennia. Each meter reveals older history. And at the bottom, water moves in darkness, carrying life that evolved in conditions we're only beginning to understand. In 2016, an expedition mapping the ocean floor near Antarctica discovered unusual formations. Underwater structures that appeared too regular to be natural rock formations. The images showed what looked like walls meeting at right angles and flat surfaces that seemed engineered. When analyzed, most of these turned out to be natural geological formations that coincidentally had regular shapes. But some researchers argued that a few of the structures couldn't be easily explained by geology alone. The debate continues. If ancient civilizations existed in Antarctica before it was covered in ice, evidence would be buried under miles of frozen water. We know Antarctica wasn't always frozen. Millions of years ago, it had forests and temperate climate. Some theories suggest advanced civilizations could have existed then. This would place them far earlier than any known human civilization. If true, it would rewrite everything we know about history. But there's no solid evidence to support this. Only intriguing questions and formations that might be something more than random rock. The underwater camera reveals smooth surfaces where jagged chaos should exist. Shadows hint at angles that nature rarely creates. The scientist watching the footage pauses the image and leans closer to the screen. So, what do we make of all this? Is there any truth to Hollow Earth theory, or is it all fantasy and misinterpretation? The scientific evidence clearly shows Earth is not hollow in the way early theorists proposed. There's no shell with nothing in the middle. There's no central sun lighting an interior world. Seismic data, gravity measurements, and our understanding of planetary formation all contradict those ideas. But that doesn't mean the Earth's interior is completely understood. We've barely scratched the surface, quite literally. The deepest hole ever drilled is the Kola Superdeep borehole in Russia. It reaches about 7.5 miles down. That sounds impressive until you realize Earth's crust is up to 25 miles thick in some places. And the crust is just the outermost layer. We've never directly sampled anything below the crust. Everything we know about the mantle and core comes from indirect observations. Could there be large cavities in the crust we haven't discovered? Absolutely. We discover new cave systems regularly, and many are enormous. Could some of these connect to form larger networks? It's possible, though unlikely on the scale hollow Earth theorists propose. Could there be life in these spaces? We know there's life in extreme environments we once thought were impossible. Deep caves, underwater thermal vents, even in solid rock miles below the surface. So the existence of underground ecosystems isn't fantasy. It's established fact, just on a smaller scale than the hollow Earth theory suggests. The cavern opens into another, and then another, each larger than the one before. How deep do these networks go? How much of Earth's interior remains unexplored and unknowable? What about Admiral Byrd and Operation Highjump? Did Byrd really encounter something extraordinary? Or has his story been embellished over the decades? We may never know with certainty. His alleged secret diary cannot be verified as authentic. But Byrd did make strange statements after the expedition that don't align with a simple research mission. His warning about hostile aircraft that could fly pole to pole at incredible speeds is documented in multiple newspaper accounts from the time. Why would he say that? The early termination of Operation Highjump is also documented fact. Something caused the expedition to end months early. Whether it was weather, logistics, discovery of something unexpected, or something else entirely remains unclear. What we can say is this: the poles remain some of the least explored regions on Earth. They're hostile environments that are difficult and expensive to access. Large areas have never been thoroughly surveyed. If there were unusual phenomena or openings leading to underground spaces, it's entirely possible they remain undiscovered. The compass needle finally settles pointing, not north but downward, toward something beneath the ice that pulls with magnetic force. The explorer looks at his instrument and then at the ice beneath his feet. What's calling to him from below? There's something compelling about hollow Earth theory. It keeps it alive despite scientific skepticism. Perhaps it's the idea that there are still frontiers left to explore, that despite our advanced technology and satellite imagery, Earth still holds secrets. In an age where you can view almost anywhere on the planet through a smartphone app, the concept of undiscovered realms is romantic. It appeals to the explorer in all of us. The belief that somewhere beneath our feet there might be another world, a place where different rules apply and beings more advanced than us have chosen to remain hidden. It's the ultimate mystery. Right here on our own planet, there might be answers to questions we don't even know to ask. Or perhaps it's all just wishful thinking. The human tendency to see patterns where none exist and to believe in mysteries when the truth is more mundane. Maybe Admiral Byrd experienced hallucinations from altitude and cold. Maybe the strange animal sightings were misidentifications. Maybe the warm air currents and compass anomalies have perfectly rational explanations we simply haven't fully investigated yet. Maybe there's nothing beneath the ice, but more ice, rock, and the same Earth we already understand. But then again, maybe not. The light from inside the cavern grows brighter as you descend. It's not firelight or electric light, but something else entirely. Something that seems to come from the stones themselves. You take another step forward into the unknown. I want to leave you with this question. If Admiral Byrd did find an entrance to an underground world, and if beings there give him a warning about humanity's path, what would that mean? The message he supposedly received was about nuclear weapons and the danger they pose. This was 1947, just 2 years after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The world was waking up to the reality that we now possess the power to destroy ourselves. If beings more advanced than us were watching, that would be exactly the moment they might choose to make contact, to warn us before we went too far. Of course, this assumes the story is true, and we have no proof that it is. But the timing is interesting to consider. Since then, we've conducted thousands of nuclear tests. We've built weapons capable of ending whole life on Earth. We've had close calls that nearly resulted in global catastrophe. If there are beings watching us, they must be concerned. Or perhaps they've seen this pattern before in other civilizations and know there is nothing they can do to stop us. Perhaps they're simply waiting to see if we'll survive ourselves. The missile silo sits in silence beneath the prairie. Deep underground, weapons sleep that could end everything. And deeper still, in places we've never reached, others might be watching. I've spent thousands of words exploring this theory from every angle. We've looked at the historical development of the idea. We've examined Admiral Byrd's expedition and the questions it raises. We've considered the scientific evidence, both supporting and contradicting Hollow Earth claims. We've explored the legends and stories that appear across cultures. And we've pondered what it would mean if any of it were true. So, what do you think? Are the polar regions hiding entrances to underground realms? Did Admiral Byrd encounter something extraordinary that was covered up? Is there any possibility that beings more advanced than us live beneath the Earth's surface? Or is this all just fantasy, the modern version of ancient mythology? The beautiful thing about mysteries like this is that we don't have to choose a side immediately. We can hold the questions in our minds and let them inspire us to keep looking, keep investigating, keep wondering. Science progresses by asking questions that seem impossible, by investigating claims that mainstream thought dismisses. Sometimes those investigations confirm that the conventional wisdom was right, but sometimes they reveal that reality is stranger than we imagined. If you found this journey into Hollow Earth theory thought-provoking, I'd appreciate you giving this video a like. And if you want to explore more mysteries like this, consider subscribing. There are so many unexplained phenomena waiting to be examined. So many questions that deserve deeper investigation. The ice continues its endless expansion toward the horizon. Beneath it, water moves in darkness. Beneath that, rock holds secrets pressed into being over millions of years. And beneath that, perhaps, something else exists. Something waiting. The wind picks up, blowing snow across the frozen landscape. An explorer stands alone at the edge of the known world. Behind him is everything mapped, measured, and understood. Before him is nothing but white and cold and questions. He takes a step forward. The compass in his hand spins wildly. He takes another step. The ice beneath his feet groans, as if something below is waking. He takes a third step, and the world changes. Admiral Byrd's diary sits in a vault somewhere, classified or destroyed, or perhaps never real to begin with. The truth of what he saw, or didn't see, remains locked away. But the questions he raised are still with us. Every year, new expeditions venture to the poles. Scientists drill deeper into the ice, searching for ancient climate data trapped in frozen layers. They map the ocean floor beneath the ice shelf looking for geological formations. They analyze satellite imagery, searching for anomalies. What will they find? More questions, certainly. Perhaps some answers. And maybe, just maybe, something that forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about the world beneath our feet. Until that day comes, the Hollow Earth theory remains what it's always been. A compelling mystery that reminds us how much we still don't know. A legend that persists because some part of us wants it to be true, and a question that may never be fully answered. The entrance to the tunnel is barely visible in the ice. Ancient stones frame an opening that leads downward into darkness. No one knows who built this passage. No one knows where it leads. But the invitation is clear. Step forward if you dare. Descend into the unknown. Discover what waits below. Or turn back to the surface, to the light, to the comfortable certainty of the world you already know. The choice is yours. But once you've seen the entrance, once you know it's there, can you ever really turn away? Can you stop wondering what mysteries lie beyond that threshold? Can you resist the call of the deep earth? I'll leave you with that thought. Thank you for watching. If you found this deep dive into Hollow Earth theory intriguing, consider subscribing so you don't miss future investigations into the unexplained. There are more mysteries waiting, some even stranger than a hidden world beneath our feet. Until we meet again in the next mystery, keep questioning and keep wondering. The truth, whatever it is still out there waiting to be discovered.